Hi guys, Mike of Mike Reviews It All, and if you're a cord cutter like me, you're pretty much maybe on like Netflix and Hulu, you're really trying to keep your costs down, this ESPN Plus, if you haven't heard of their new streaming service, it's $4.99 a month. I was very interested in it because the UFC starts a contract with ESPN on December 29th, where they're going to show 20 UFCs just on the ESPN Plus channel next year. I understand a lot of people aren't into UFC though, and that's why this is not on my MMA channel. If you're into soccer, you're going to get a lot of soccer. So this is just ESPN shows. 134. This is DVR shows. If you're into fantasy football, you're getting a ton of that. Ariel and the Bad Guy, if you're into fighting. This detail thing. From the mind of Kobe Bryant, it's like 13 different in detail things with him, and they do other athletes. Enhance, this is like a sports science kind of thing. The 30 for 30s won a ton of awards, different documentaries and stuff. You can see 30 for 30 Spotlight. That's going to go through. If you haven't seen them, you see like the last days of Bobby Knight, you know, a bombastic figure that a lot of people were entertained by, and maybe, you know, either you loved him or hate him, and probably still do. The Fab Five, that big, you know, great team in Michigan documentary on the Michigan Wolverines Fab Five, Chris Webber, Jalen Rose, and some other greats. Into wrestling, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, he's still around, even if you're not like a WWE guy. I mean, he's just got a magnetic personality that people find very entertaining. Tommy Morrison, of course, one of the great boxers, a nephew of John Wayne. He'd go on to become a WBO boxing heavyweight champion, and of course, eventually, unfortunately, died of AIDS. The day the series stopped. I said they've won tons of awards for these documentaries, for the 30 series and other documentaries on there, playing for the mob, talking about betting in sports. OJ Made in America. That's a 5-part series that's won awards. Chasing Tyson. I'm going to try to watch that later tonight, probably because I'm a big fight fan. They go into Muhammad and Larry. They do a really good job of breaking down what goes on in different fights and things. No Moss, of course, the Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard fight, where Roberto Duran got tired of chasing Sugar Ray Leonard around and said no more on a stool, and that's been kind of legend since then. Of Miracles and Men, I'm sure you all know about that. It's a 1980 U.S. Olympic team. Show your kids these things, that didn't grow up with them or don't know what they are. The 1980 U.S. Men's Olympic team, when they went against what was thought to be undefeatable USSR hockey team. Marion Jones, a great athlete who went through some trials later on down the line. Benji, Broke, I mean, just a lot of Dan Marino, Elway to Marino, talking about just a lot of great quarterbacks. The 85 Bears, thought to be one of the best teams of all time. The Real Rocky, that talks about Wepner, the guy who a lot of people say like the Rocky movie was based on. Hashtag announcement. Of course, that's Magic Johnson. It goes through parts of Magic Johnson's life, but the announcement, of course, was the huge announcement and where you were when you found out Magic Johnson had AIDS or the HIV virus. And like I said, there is 5-part OJ Made in America. Cheryl Swoops, Venus Williams, A lot of different awesome documentaries. ESPN Plus always, the live always playing on a pause it because I don't want to get kicked off or demonetized. But I really wanted to give you guys a good idea of what's on here. Now, a lot of these games were live, and now you can go back and watch all the replays. I can watch our Mariners today versus the Athletics. I don't know who won yet, so I could go through that and watch that if I have the time tonight. This is boxing live and upcoming. Right now, it's kind of a drought in boxing, so it's just ESPN undercards and weigh-ins, but there'll be more boxing there later, and they've already talked about a lot of the boxing they're going to be scheduling on there. Best of college football. You can go back and watch, tons of great college football games. If you're a soccer fan, there's just ridiculous amount of content on here for soccer. It's insane. Upcoming on MLB.TV. Even into League of Legends, the video game. I always laugh when people talk about watching people play video games, but it's one of the biggest sports, if that's what you want to call it, on Earth. I can't make fun of anyone. My son loves it. My son's into it. I know people that make a living off of streaming video games. So it's certainly no joke. More on demand. You got the Best of E60, another one of those great documentary series that I was talking about. And, Silent Night Lights, if you haven't heard about that story. 22 Harvest Street, this is like a Day of the Dead kind of thing. Ricky Dixon. Just a lot of different things on here. Of course, you're going to see all the sports centers. ESPN Year One. What I've heard is a great documentary in this corner, and the Boxing Beat, both boxing shows. If you're into boxing and MMA, you need to go check out my other channel. Also, Fights of Friends, if you're not subscribed over there. If you are into boxing, I do have some knowledge on that. So let's go into boxing. If you're not, you might want to fast forward through part of this, but it's going to take you back all the way to the greats, and this is going to start playing. So I'm going to pause it, like I said, so I don't get in trouble. But who doesn't like Muhammad Ali? And you get Ali versus Foreman, of course, the Rumble in the Jungle. Ali versus Frazier, 2 and 3. Ali versus Sonny Liston when he first won the title, and then when he came back and knocked him out in the first round. Ali versus Ken Norton. Ken Norton won the first one where Ali was talking. Norton broke his jaw. I believe it was in the first round. Ali went on and fought 14 rounds with a broken jaw. Ali versus great Floyd Patterson. And there's Ali versus Chuck Wepner. Chuck Wepner was the guy a lot of people say was the real life inspiration for Rocky. Bear versus Braddock. Max Braddock, the guy that Cinderella Man, the movie, was based on, in his great battle with Max Baer and with Joe Louis. Ezzard Charles versus Jersey Joe Walcott, 3. That's one of the greatest trilogies ever. Those guys are just absolutely insane. Terrence Crawford, he's, a modern day legend, one of the best guys out there in boxing right now. So you get some current stuff. A lot of his current fights, like 13 of them. But you can go back and watch the first De La Hoya versus Chavez fight, all the way back to Jack Dempsey and the Dempsey versus Tunney, both fights. Dempsey versus Willard. You can go back to Roberto Duran. All 3 of his fights with Sugar Ray Leonard. And the boxing goes deep. So as a fight fan, I mean, I was happy about that. A lot of these fights are disappearing from YouTube. So George Foreman versus Kenny Norton, Frazier versus Foreman, where Foreman literally lifted Frazier up off the canvas with one punch. Sugar Ray Robinson, of course, he was an all-time great. A lot of people say the greatest pound-for-pound fighter ever. Hagler versus Hearns, just an absolute legendary slugfest. And just, you know, an example of human fortitude and what the human mind and body can go through, because those two just punish each other. Hagler versus Leonard, highly disputed decision. Sugar Ray Leonard was given the decision in this. Marvelous Marvin Hagler was undefeated before this fight. He felt the decision was so bad that not only did he retire from boxing, he moved out of the country. I believe he still lives, I want to say, in France. He does not live here. And then Tommy Hearns versus Sugar Ray Leonard 2. Jake LaMotta. You know, he's the guy who Raging Bull was made after. Lomachenko, one of the best boxers out there today. This guy is absolute defensive genius. Joe Louis versus Max Baer 1 and 2. Joe Louis versus Broddock, like I was talking about earlier. Broddock is the guy from they show this, talk about this fight in the movie Cinderella Man with Russell Crowe. And then Joe Louis versus Billy Conn. Joe Louis versus Max Schmeling 1 and 2. These were of historic significance because even though Schmeling seemed like a good guy, this was during the World Wars, and we wanted a good guy and we wanted a bad guy. And Schmeling was the bad guy because we were at war with Germany. So a lot of historic semblance to that rivalry. And then, of course, Rocky Marciano, 49-0. A lot of people consider him the greatest heavyweight boxer of all time. Here's his, his fight with Joe Louis, Jersey Joe Walcott 1 and 2. Those were incredible fights. This is back when they used to fight 15 rounds in championship fights. Back in the day, Floyd Mayweather, this Mayweather versus Judah fight was one of the toughest fights Floyd Mayweather was ever in. Norton versus Corey was good. A lot of Manny Pacquiao on here. This is where I first seen Manny Pacquiao, was against the great Marco Antonio Barrera. That's an absolute classic fight. You get to see his trilogy with Bradley, his fight against Miguel Cotto, Ricky Hatton, Antonio Margarita, Rafael Marquez, the second and third and fourth fight. And then him against Eric Morales, their second fight. Brandon Rios, and then against Fernando Vargas. Large assortment of Manny Pacquiao fights. Floyd Patterson versus Johansson 1 and 2. Pazienza versus Duran 2. They had some absolute wars. Sugar Ray Robinson, I talked about, he fought Jake LaMotta. This was the 6th time they fought. They used to fight. There wasn't as many guys back then. Sometimes there wasn't as much competition, and nobody ducked anybody. So a lot of times guys would fight 5, 6 times. And I want to say Sugar Ray Robinson had around 150, 200 fights. He had a lot of fights in his career. I mean, the guy just liked to fight, and he wasn't getting, $1 million paydays. Of course, go into the tyrannical Mike Tyson, just violence against him, against Trevor Berbick, the first fight against Frank Bruno, when he was upset by Buster Douglas, a legendary upset, biggest upset in boxing, if not sports history, against Jesse Ferguson, Larry Holmes, Jameson, Michael Johnson, Michael Spinks. So I said a lot of stuff if you're a boxing fan, soccer, Olympics, college football, fantasy football, and then just all the time live. This is like your upcoming on ESPN, and this shows you your live schedule. Chinese Super League. I don't even know what that is, but this is all sports. You can go by sports. Top Rank Boxing, Jennings versus Dimitrenko weigh-in. Top Rank on ESPN undercards. But let's go, let's go something that we know is coming up soon. Let's just go all sports. A lot of baseball coming up. A lot of Major League Soccer. You like Major League Soccer, you get to see all this. United Soccer League, Major League Soccer League, down to softball, volleyball, just a ton of sports. More sports than I could ever watch. So if you're into sports and you've been looking for a different way to watch sports, I think for $4.99 a month, this is a great option. I took the free day trial. It's only a 7-day trial. I wish it was a 30-day trial. But like I said, I love sports. When I do get a chance to watch TV, it generally is sports. I'll watch some stuff with some Netflix with the family, with the wifey and the kids. But when it's just me, if I watch TV, it's going to be sports. So I hope that review was informational. If you have any questions that I might be able to answer, put them down there in the comments. Let me know what you think of ESPN Plus. Have you tried it out? Let me know what your experience is. Share it with others. As always, I love you, I respect you, and I will see you very soon.